There is a hum. It is not a song. It is not a chant. It is a precise biological signal, one that ancient practitioners encoded into breathwork over 3,000 years ago, long before neuroscience had the instruments to measure what it was actually doing to the human brain. Here is what those instruments now show. After the age of 40, the human brain loses approximately 5% of its volume per decade. The hippocampus, the structure governing memory and spatial orientation, shrinks measurably every year past 50. Amyloid beta protein, the molecular signature of Alzheimer's disease, begins accumulating in the brain decades before a single symptom appears. And the glymphatic system, the brain's primary waste disposal network, becomes 40% less efficient with age, leaving that toxic protein to accumulate unchallenged. What will follow is not motivational. It is mechanistic. The anatomy of a single ancient practice. The precise neurological pathway it activates. The published science that confirms what Vedic seers already knew. And exactly how to perform it. Tonight. The glymphatic system was only formally identified by Western science in 2013. Before that, neuroscientists had a problem they couldn't explain. The brain produces enormous amounts of metabolic waste, including amyloid beta, and yet there was no known mechanism for clearing it. Then researchers at the University of Rochester discovered a network of channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels, driven by cerebrospinal fluid, that flushes the brain of accumulated toxins. The critical detail: this system operates almost exclusively during deep parasympathetic states. Slow breathing, low heart rate, vagal dominance. The nervous system must be in a state of profound rest for glymphatic clearance to proceed at full capacity. Modern life makes this nearly impossible. Chronic cortisol elevation, the biochemical signature of sustained stress, keeps the autonomic nervous system locked in sympathetic dominance. Screens before sleep, noise, inflammatory diet. The cumulative effect is a brain that never fully shifts into the clearance state it requires. Amyloid beta accumulates. Neural tissue degrades. Cognitive aging accelerates. Not because aging is inevitable, but because the conditions required for the brain's own maintenance protocols are never met. The problem is not age. The problem is a nervous system that never learned to stop. Bhramari Pranayama, the humming bee breath. Referenced in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, practiced across yogic lineages for millennia, and encoded in ancient pranayama texts as a technique specifically associated with mental clarity, longevity, and the stilling of what Sanskrit practitioners called vritti, the agitation of the mind. What the Vedic seers were describing is now mappable in precise anatomical terms. When the mouth is closed and a low, resonant hum is produced through the nasal passage, the vibration travels through the cribriform plate, the porous bone separating the nasal cavity from the brain, directly stimulating the olfactory bulb and triggering measurable nitric oxide production in the paranasal sinuses. Research has measured this surge at approximately 1,500% above baseline. That nitric oxide does not stay local. It enters the bloodstream, dilates cerebral blood vessels, and creates the exact hemodynamic conditions required for parasympathetic dominance. Simultaneously, the humming activates the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, the primary highway of the parasympathetic nervous system, which then signals the brainstem and propagates directly to the hippocampus. The glymphatic system responds. The clearance state is initiated. The brain begins doing what it was designed to do, but what modern life persistently prevents. At what age did you first feel like your mind wasn't as sharp as it used to be? And did anyone ever tell you it could be reversed? The mechanisms are not theoretical. They are published. A 2012 study indexed under PMID 22307473 measured nitric oxide production during Bhramari Pranayama and documented the dramatic increase in nasal cavity nitric oxide, confirming the vascular and neurological cascade that yogic practitioners had described through practice alone. The researchers were not studying ancient wisdom. They were studying gas dynamics in the sinuses. What they found mapped precisely onto a 3,000-year-old technique. Separate research on vagus nerve stimulation has demonstrated consistent upregulation of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the protein directly responsible for hippocampal neurogenesis, new neurons, in an adult brain, stimulated by controlled resonance breathing. Studies on glymphatic clearance have confirmed that slow, diaphragmatic breathing with extended exhalation, precisely the mechanics of Bhramari, produces the parasympathetic depth required for full glymphatic activation. The alpha and theta brainwave states induced by sustained humming are the same states associated with neural repair and memory consolidation. Science is only now catching up to what yogic lineages knew 3,000 years ago. The instruments are new. The knowledge is ancient. The biology was always there, waiting to be activated. Perform Bhramari Pranayama at pre-dawn or immediately before sleep. These are the windows of maximum glymphatic sensitivity, when melatonin and cortisol are in their most favorable ratio, and the nervous system is already predisposed toward parasympathetic activation. Sit upright, spine vertical, jaw unclenched, lips gently sealed, teeth slightly parted. Place the thumbs lightly over the ear cartilage, not deep inside the ear canal, but pressing the tragus to partially occlude external sound. This is the classic Shanmukhi position. It internalizes auditory perception and amplifies the resonance of the hum within the skull. Inhale slowly and fully through the nose. On the exhale, produce a continuous, low-frequency not a high tone, not a chest tone, but a resonant vibration felt primarily in the nasal cavity and behind the eyes. The correct frequency produces a perceptible buzzing sensation at the cribriform plate. If the vibration is felt only in the chest, lower the pitch. 10 minutes is the minimum threshold for meaningful glymphatic and vagal effect. 12 to 15 is optimal. Do not stop at 3 repetitions and expect systemic change. Sustained duration is the variable ancient practitioners emphasized repeatedly. Not intensity, not effort, but continuance. After completion, sit in silence for 2 to 3 minutes. The shift in neurological state will be perceptible. This is not relaxation as most people experience it. This is the nervous system crossing into its maintenance mode, a state most modern men have never consciously accessed. Stop optimizing. Stop adding. Stop searching for the next protocol, the next supplement, the next biohack that promises what this single practice already delivers. The brain does not require more input. It requires the conditions for its own repair. Bhramari is not an addition to a wellness routine. It is the removal of the obstacle, chronic sympathetic dominance, that was preventing the brain's native intelligence from operating. 10 minutes, closed mouth, 1 resonant hum. That is the entire intervention. Ancient practitioners did not bury this in complexity. They encoded it in simplicity because simplicity is what survives 3,000 years. The men who will integrate this are not the ones chasing novelty. They are the ones who recognize when something is real, that it requires no embellishment. The glymphatic system does not care about motivation. It responds to conditions. Create the conditions, and the biology follows. A very small number of people across a very large world now understand what the nasal hum actually does to the aging brain. The mechanism, the pathway, the published evidence, the precise practice. That number just increased. Comment the word "awake" below. One word, nothing else.